Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. We begin our video with a story about a conflict between two female students, and in the end, justice was served. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. You're not getting more free rides. A friend, well, I thought she was a friend at the time, and I were going to the same university. I have a car, she doesn't, so we come up with an arrangement that I pick her up before class and drop her off afterwards for a small amount of money paid at the beginning of the week. It wasn't a bad setup, albeit costing me a little more to go get her than what she paid me, and sometimes I used to hang around campus for a few hours because of her schedule. And then came the requests. Because she was paying me so much every week, I had to drive her home after a club that ended at night, which she knew I didn't particularly enjoy going to, but was almost the only thing happening on campus. And soon after, I had to drive her to a nearby restaurant and then drive her home after 2 or 3 hours, well into the AM at this point, or she would request going to the mall or some fast food joint. And those requests usually coincided with days I needed to study or complete projects or papers for class the next day, or at the end of the month when I could barely afford to put petrol in the car, all of which she knew about. Other times, she requested I skip a class and drive her home early because she didn't feel like going. I think you get the drift. Around halfway through the term, she started getting dodgy on paying me. First, even more complaints about how much it cost. Then she wouldn't have the money on Monday, all the way until she was bitching the entire ride back to her house on Friday afternoon about having to give me a measly tenner. Sometimes she had to run in and yell at her mom to give her money while I stewed in her driveway. Funny how she had the money to eat out multiple times every week, plus eat on campus nearly every day, plus order expensive merchandise online at least a few times every month. But giving me that small amount of money every week was the only thing depleting her bank account. Sarcasm. At this point, there's 6 or 7 weeks left in the term. Classes were canceled on Friday for some reason, so I didn't get my tenner. Texted her politely asking for the money on Monday. She said she'd have it. Come Monday, I reminded her as she's getting in the car, only for her to go backcrap crazy about how I don't deserve any money whatsoever for the past week because I didn't drive her to campus on Friday. Okay, whatever. It was the beginning of the month and I just needed to budget a little more carefully to make ends meet. I was also coming down with a cold or some crap like that and didn't have the energy to say anything back. She didn't pay me that week either and promised to pay me after the weekend. Okay, whatever. Then she didn't pay me the next week and didn't even bother vomiting bullcrap for an excuse or about when she would pay me. Remember that cold I mentioned? I used that as an excuse to leave after my class on Friday of the 3rd week that she hadn't paid me. I didn't tell her I'd left until she texted me once her last class was over, almost 3 hours later. Then I didn't pick her up that Monday because some deity somewhere smiled upon me and caused my sole class that day to be canceled. And I didn't pick her up on Tuesday or any day that week or any day the next week. Not until about halfway through the 3rd week did I bother communicating with her, and I demanded that she give me the tenner for the week if she wanted any rides for the rest of the week. After that, for the rest of the term and subsequent terms, she almost always had the money for me on Mondays, and her bitching about it, to me at least, was close to non-existent. And our second story. Gotta work a weekend day? Well, all right. I work at a call center for a bank. Recently, I applied for a department that's higher pay, and I was approved. Sweet. Part of the perks of applying for another department is that you get to create your own new schedule within the current business needs for that department. They give you a fancy graph, and you fill out the hours you want, and if it's all over a certain percentage of what they want you there, you've got yourself a schedule. Part of the life of a 24/7 call center is you have to work weekends. This department requires that you work at least one weekend day. Upon reviewing the schedule graph, I saw one of the options available was to work 4 9-hour shifts and 1 4-hour shift. Sweet. Monday through Thursday, 9-hour shifts, off Friday, 4 hours Saturday afternoon, off Sunday. It was approved, no problem. And for 4 measly vacation hours, I have a 3-day weekend whenever I want. The rules are now that you have to work at least 8 hours on your one weekend day. Man, did I feel smug the first time I saw that update. And our last story. Bank screws old lady, lawyer screws bank, old lady gets millions back. Financial advisors employed by a pretty major bank stole all the money of a wealthy old lady who was dying of Alzheimer's, and she didn't know anything until her lights were cut off. My brother was a pretty small-time lawyer and got the call to represent her. Every other big-time attorney in the area had either passed on the case or tried and failed to get anywhere. When you're up against a legal team that makes a collective $10,000 an hour, it's not easy. Okay, maybe it wasn't $10K an hour to penny, give or take a K, and you get the point. And since banks always have mandatory arbitration clauses worked into their contracts, she couldn't sue or even do discovery. Oh, proper discovery then, discovery as you and I know it, as it ought to be. Like it was obvious what had happened, and the only people with access to the account were clearly implicated, but A, it was hard to prove without any access to bank records, and B, under arbitration, it wouldn't matter anyway. They could be criminally prosecuted, but the bank wouldn't have to pay back the money. Did I mention the bank had, at this point, frozen the lady's access to her accounts due to fraud, so she couldn't even get her own bank statements? FINRA did not really apply in this case for many reasons that I never understood properly then, and neither remember nor care about now. Anyway, my bro became pretty obsessed with avenging this woman. By the time he got the case, she barely even knew what her own situation was most of the time, but her son just wanted to make the bank bend over, and my brother was all in. He managed to find an incredibly obscure technicality that nullified the arbitration clause and was able to force a major bank into the discovery process. That alone was a huge enough deal that the decision was written up in many legal newspapers. Oh, FFS journals figure it out, across the country. The technicality in TLDR form was that the bank failed to keep an original copy of the contract, so they couldn't prove there was an arbitration clause. It's apparently normal for them not to keep originals, but in this case they didn't even keep reliable copies, and neither person who signed the contracts could be deposed under oath to determine whether the clause existed. So the judge threw out the case. The obscure part was that the copies were almost exact duplicates of the original, but a few words had been changed and the pages were renumbered, and he caught the differences and pointed out that they weren't true duplicates. It wasn't really a loophole in the law so much as a flaw in the bank's bookkeeping. After fighting and delaying discovery until the very last minute, the bank dumped 200-plus boxes of documents on my brother-in-law the Friday before the Monday discovery hearing. He had 72 hours to go through tens of thousands of pages of documents. Oh, FFS, is it really that unbelievable that a lawyer would try to keep a case moving along? Turns out he didn't need the continuance so many of you experts claim he would have. This attitude explains a lot about a lot of cases. He rented himself a hotel for the weekend so he'd have no disturbances, had a friend bring a dolly and hand-truck the boxes to the hotel room, and got to work. In one of the boxes was an email between a bank VP and the bank's chief lawyer. Incorrectly described this as two VPs in my previous post, discussing how there would never be a discovery process, so there was no need to destroy documents, i.e. future evidence, and also saying they weren't worried about the little old lady lawsuit since the bank had frozen her accounts, so she wouldn't be able to pay her lawyer, and he was just a small-time country lawyer, their words, who would surely quit once he wasn't being paid. It wasn't like he worked for some huge firm that could just pay his bills while he worked. They also discussed how the lady would likely die of Alzheimer's before her accounts would be unfrozen once the fraud was proven to be false. Oh, FFS, no, it's not necessarily attorney-client privilege, even though I know it's not a magic wand you can wave and make everything disappear. It fell outside the parameters of privilege. Do you really think the bank would have settled if they had felt otherwise? They had my bro all wrong, of course. He was working all day on paying cases and then staying up half the night working on this one, sometimes without getting paid anything for months. We did the math later. He made about $275 an hour for his work over the span of 7+ years. Anyway, these chuckleheads openly discussed several illegal acts and emails to each other, then failed to destroy the paperwork proving they had actually undertaken those acts, which legally they could have destroyed at the time, but were so arrogant they thought they didn't have to. When my brother entered that into evidence Monday morning, they immediately motioned for a recess and offered to settle for, an undisclosed sum. He also won his client $10 million, edit $13 million, in a separate part of the lawsuit. One agent recently finished serving a long sentence in the same federal prison as Bernie Madoff. He got prison time for tax fraud and some combo of bank fraud, forgery, perjury to the feds, and I think filing false documents. I can't remember which of these he pleaded guilty to, but those were the original accusations. This is why he couldn't be deposed in the arbitration clause part. He had already pleaded guilty to some of these charges and was indicted on others, so the judge deemed his word under oath to be unreliable. He also lost his home, the beach home he bought with the old lady's money, had his financial broker license revoked, and his wife left him. However, his kid did get a private college education paid for in cash with the lady's money, and he bought $200,000 worth of wine that was never recovered. Sadly, the lady did in fact die before the case settled, so the money went to her son and to a large charitable trust, and then elected my brother as the main trustee. So he gets to disperse the money he won in the settlement and see a lot of people benefit from his work. The funniest part of this revenge was that the apparent motive for the theft was not just that the agent wanted to be rich. He had accomplices, but he was the main mastermind. He specifically wanted to use the money to enhance his standing in the community. So actually, he donated a lot of the stolen money to charities so that he could be invited to huge galas, get philanthropic awards, etc. Now he's broke, unemployed, divorced, and disgraced, while my brother is going to galas and getting philanthropic awards with the money this guy helped pay for with the sale of his houses, cars, etc. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.